and also it's very short-lived. You cannot pick it up. It will not be sufficient to create a dipole that will live over a certain time span, and the energy in that dipole is way too small to be picked up. So EG is not referring to action potentials. A second source, possible source, are the postsynaptic potentials that are living in dendritic trees of neurons. So just to remind you, you have an axon coming from a neuron. It makes synaptic contact to another neuron, and in response to the action potential arriving, you get neurotransmitter substance being released in the synaptic cleft that separates the two neurons. And these neurotransmitters, they bind onto the postsynaptic site, and so on. And the binding is actually resulting in some change in the membrane potential locally standing over the receiving neuron's membrane. These postsynaptic potentials can be positive in sign, so we call it an excitatory, or negative, then we call it inhibitory. And these processes can take a long time to build up, so it can be over 100 milliseconds or so that the thing is building up. So all this activity that you see is actually much more long-lived. So I'm slide 19. So indeed, this is actually fulfilling the requirements of what can be recorded with EG. On slide 20, we show here a possible scenario. On the top, you have synapse coming from some afferent, and you have an electrode in the label number 1. It's inside the neuron, and there you see you get because it's an excitatory synapse, you get a positive glitch in amplitude, and then you see electrode 2, there you see the opposite in sign. So it's always like that. So you have you have a positive thing, and that's of course externally a negative thing. So the two are opposite in sign. But anyway, as soon as this excitatory activity is happening and it's lasting for hundreds, even hundreds of milliseconds, you get an ion flow that goes through the inside the neuron, exits again, and the loop is closed. So you have sort of current loop inside, outside the neuron, and that current loop is persisting, as I said, for even hundreds of milliseconds. In this way, you have a sort of small dipole, like a small battery, if you like, a small source, current source. Of course, it's not the only. If this is not the only neuron where these things are happening, and I'm slide 21 now, you see we have 3 images of pyramidal neurons. These are big neurons that are orthogonal to the scalp surface shown here. If all these processes are happening on all these thousands and thousands of neurons at the same time, these dipoles are actually all will be summating and form a big dipole. And the bigger the better, because then we can pick it up at scalp level with our electrodes. On the surface of the brain, we have more chance to pick that up, as you can understand. If it's deeper in the brain, it gets attenuated, dispersed, and yeah, you will see not much anymore of it on the scalp. So if you look at slide 22, you see different scenarios here. Left was right. Sorry, on the right-hand side, you have the scenario I just talked about. You have a positive synapses in a bunch of in 3 pyramidal cells, and you see the minuses that are extracellulary, but inside it was of course positive. And then you see that in response to that, again, you have a reversal in amplitude. You get all this picked up at the scalp. And this on the left side, you see an alternative solution where you have more basal synapses that then create a dipole with a different sign. The pluses are now on top while on the right-hand side, the pluses were on the bottom. So this, of course, reflects also the signature and the sign of what you can pick up in terms of your electrode placed on the scalp. So you see on the left side and the right side, you see the difference for both cases are with positive synapses, so excitatory activity, but you see that the glitches you're recording have different signs. So whatever you're recording on the scalp, a positive deflection or negative deflection does not necessarily imply that the underlying source is being excited or depressed. It's just the way the dipole is oriented and how you're recording with respect to the dipole. Okay. Okay, so this was a bit about EEG. We will come back to that a lot. Actually, basically everything we will got in terms of non-invasive recordings will be related to EEG. Then slide 23, we see MEG, magnetoencephalography. It's something special. In Belgium, there's only one, and in Brussels. And is not so much used because it's a pretty expensive device, first. Secondly, it needs to be placed in a bunker to shield it from all sorts of magnetic effects, and it has to be cooled by liquid helium to get down the noise. And even participants cannot wear a watch or something like that. There can be no laptop in the room, and it's all very, very difficult to work with. And you need also skilled personnel to operate it. So it's not much used in Belgium, at least, for clinical purposes. In the Netherlands, I think there are 4 of them, but most of them of the technology for scientific purposes and clinical purposes was developed in Finland. So how does it work? Well, you have magnetic activity in the brain. So yeah, electrical and magnetic activity are coupled. These are Maxwell's laws, remember, from your physics class. You have actually, to pick up that magnetic activity, you have to have magnetic sensors placed all around the head. So instead of electrodes picking up electrical activity, you have sensors that pick up magnetic activity, and it looks like that. These are small electronic sensors, so-called Josephson junctions, that can pick up extremely small activity. And you see the scale here. It's femtotesla, 200 femtotesla means 10 to the minus 15, so 1.5, minus 1.5. Extremely small. So these sensors can pick up activity in the range of 10 to minus 11 Tesla. So very small stuff indeed. The Earth magnetism, as a reference, is 10 to the minus 5. So it's 10 orders of magnitude larger than what we are recording here on that order. Okay, so it is extremely small stuff. And that's why you have to take a lot of precaution to isolate the equipment from magnetic activity from the Earth, because that's 10 orders of magnitude stronger. It has, of course, some advantages, and you can. There is no gel to be done. It is compatible with for use by children and infants. So it has definitely something to it. And if I move to slide 24, it shows the principle. Indeed, if you have like a magnet, it has also 2 poles, and then you have magnetic field lines. And these magnetic field lines can be, they also go through the brain, through the tissue, and through all the bone and fluids and stuff, and the skin, and can be picked up by these magnetic sensors. And also magnetic fields, they do summate in a similar way as electrical dipoles can summate. This way, if there is large groups, similar story, large groups of neurons generate these magnetic dipoles, that activity can be picked up by these electrodes. They're called squid electrodes. It is a bit of a forced name. So these are electrodes, as I said, based on Josephson junctions that can pick up extremely small magnetic field changes. I'm on slide 25 now. What is the principle? This is if you see the electrical activity, electrical current going through a wire, for example, then you have a magnetic field around it. This is Oersted's law. You can use your right hand for that. The thumb is pointing